But from there, I really did, like, I've got 2 little kids at home. My oldest is 3, my youngest is a year and a half. And I got a wife, and I always, jokingly said I got to add a lot more zeros to the cost of flight training if I get divorced. So it's like balancing the at-home life with the new schedule and the constant changing of it. And that was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
Hello, aviators. Welcome back to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you the tips, tricks, hacks, and shortcuts to get you into a cockpit faster and cheaper. I'm Sean.
And I'm Mike.
And we got another episode for you this week. Another interview. This is a success story, and this is actually really cool. This episode is going to be very interesting to anyone that's on the cusp of starting their training, researching flight schools, and getting out there and getting this thing done as fast and cheap as possible. We may have a contention for I don't know if it's record breaking, but it's certainly very amazing what Colin was able to do here. And I'll let Mike introduce Colin.
Yeah, sure. So Colin Harper here. We've known Colin for about 6 months now. We're pleased to announce he is one of the launch customers in our weekly coaching that you can join in anytime. Anybody watching can get on that, and it's a low monthly fee, and you can jump on a Zoom call where there's other pilots just like you at all various experience levels. And Sean and I are on that every week with our schedule. We make it a point that both of us are on it, and then we can keep track of your progress and give you tips and pointers down the way. But Colin is particularly near and dear to our heart because he started the coaching in the spring. And just last week, on last week's call, he let everyone know that he passed his CFI check ride successfully. And Colin had no flight experience prior to this spring. And he's here to tell us his journey on how he did it. And he's also going to share at the end what he spent on doing it. And I think everybody will be pleased to hear that. Well, you won't be pleased if you went to a big box flight school and spent a lot of money. I'll give you a teaser on all that, man. But Colin, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Mike and Sean. It's been a lot of fun, the journey, and it's kind of just feels like it's starting all over again, but I can breathe a little bit now. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So start off, tell us a little bit briefly about yourself. I don't think you're a second career guy, so let everybody know kind of the background of what landed you to do what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you the real condensed version, and we'll try to focus on kind of the meat, and I'll try to share as much useful information about my journey as I can. But the condensed version is I got lost on my way to becoming a rock climbing guide, wound up as a partner in a financial planning practice for 12 years. And I woke up one day, I took a month off in the fall, and I can't do this anymore. I enjoyed the work and it was okay, but there was a hole there, and being a pilot, something I always wanted to do. And I just looked at my wife one day in the fall, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give this a go. It was kind of I had a good exit point out of my firm. I sold out to my partners, and April 1st, I started flying full time. And then kind of last week, I passed my CFI check ride, and we are racking up dual given real quick. So things are going good. So that's kind of the abbreviated version of that story. There's plenty more there, but we'll focus on other things today.
Awesome. Okay, so when you first joined us in the spring, that was when you were selecting a flight school, right? And that's kind of, you were at the very beginning. So
at the very beginning.
Actually, real quick before we get into that,
sure.
I was going to ask him the same thing about the search for the flight school, especially since we just did that whole series on finding a flight school. But Colin, so you decided the flying thing. What kind of plan did you have going in? I mean, at this point, when you were searching for flight schools, did you even have the idea of going accelerated, or how did accelerated training enter this whole story?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I've always been real type A. So I'm like, how quickly, efficiently, and cheaply can I get this done? And I think my first answer was some of those bigger schools like the ATP, the Blue Lines, things like that. It's like, all right, 0 to hero, and however many months they advertise and everything like that. And as I started going down that path, my original plan got kind of messed up because our original plan, we live up in Pittsburgh now, and I had a small school here I was flying with and love the people. They're great people. But my plan A was always sell our house and move to Cincinnati, which are where you guys from, which is one of the things that drew me to you guys. I'm like, oh, they'd be a great resource to help me, learn about schools there and things like that. And then, or Florida, where my family lives. So, long story short, our house just didn't sell. It was not a great time to sell a house, and we're just sitting there. And they looked at me at the school I was at here, and they said, listen, like, we love having you. You're awesome to be around. If you decide you don't want to sell your house and you want to stick around, like, we've got a spot for you to teach when you're done. I know that's definitely not a sure thing, and I knew what I was getting into, and I knew that environment. But during that selection process, I mean, I went to 7 or 8 different flight schools. I was over in Cincinnati. I went to Sporty's, Lunken, and then I went to a bunch near my family down in Florida too. I went and talked to ATP, and it's just, everything just kind of fell into place on its own. And you guys gave me advice, I think, early on. You're like, don't wait to start flying. Because I was kind of waiting and kicking the can down the road. And eventually I said, you know what? Hours are hours. Like I have got to hit 250 to get to where I want to go. And if I wait 3, 4, 5 months to start, I'm going to be way behind. So flying now anywhere is better than not flying at all. And that kind of catapulted me to where I am now that, I'm very fortunate to be at a great flight school instructing there now. And, we got done really efficient. I think it was about 6 months total from like 0 to CFI.
Wow.
So you had this idea of going accelerated, and you were looking at like Blue Line and ATP. Of course, anybody doing any of this research knows ATP. And Mike and I are always referring to them as the big box flight schools.
Yep.
And the one thing I'm telling, they're wired tight with, the plans and the financing, and they're even got connections for the back end to get you a job, or you stick around instructing, you plug right in, be an instructor for them. But the thing that I'm always telling people is that ATP, that's not particularly accelerated, not when Mike and I talk about accelerated in the program we sell. So now you're shopping for this flight school, and you're looking for an accelerated school. You're looking to go fast. I mean, what kind of feedback were these schools willing to go along with a plan? Because not everybody,
none of them were.
Schools have accelerated.
It was pretty comical. I would, because I had kind of formulated this plan from like going through your course and listening to folks. I'm like, guys, listen, here's the deal. I'm going to show up with all my writtens done. And I had more than half the schools I talked to said, whoa, slow down. Don't do that. They're only good for 2 years. And I looked at them and I said, if I'm not done in 2 years, like, we got a problem. So there was more than one school that said, whoa.
See what I mean? Like, it is such an alien concept to some of these flight schools to do this.
And contrast that to where I'm at now. And I'm sitting at like maybe 15 hours. And they're like, you know what? If you want to do your check ride in 3 weeks, I think we can get this done. And I'm like, okay, let's get it done. And it was just, it's a Part 161 school, and they've gone fast with other folks before. And there was a little bit of a framework there. One of the other instructors did something very similar to me, and it was, how quick and efficiently can we get through? But the other thing I really liked about where I'm at now is a lot of that ground knowledge and ground school, they let me handle that. They let me go learn that knowledge. And there's so many great resources available now for that. There's so many different online ground schools. And, I dabbled in all of them a little bit. And that mixed with the support of my instructors along the way made it easy. And for me, I loved it because I wasn't throttled. I feel like if I was going through a 141 syllabus or something like that, I would have lost my mind, because I just want to check boxes. And this gave me the ability to check a lot of boxes really quick. So we did a pretty aggressive round, got my writtens done pretty quickly early on. And then they had space and availability. They've gotten a lot busier since then. And I was just kind of in the right place at the right time, really. And I wouldn't have been there if I hadn't started just flying.
So you said you tried a bunch of different softwares for the ground school. What did you end up liking the best, and what helped you the most, you think?
I would say, Sporty's always does a great job with training, but I found a little loophole over at Sporty's, and they have like a monthly subscription service. So I think it was either my commercial or my instrument. I can't remember. I signed up for their subscription service, which is like $25 a month. So instead of paying $250 or $300 or whatever those courses cost now, I paid like $25 for the month I needed commercial for, and then canceled it. I think Sporties was the most comprehensive one I used. I didn't do King. I did Flight Insight, and I really liked the way he kind of spells things out and describes it. I think he does a very good job of that. But I was just kind of bouncing back and forth, and we had, good gouges for check rides. I know areas I needed to focus on, and
those Sporties, the monthly Sporties thing. Not only do you get access to the private, instrument, commercial, CFI, but you get all these other knick-knack video, like
to do landings or like G1000 suite, like all this cool stuff that I would go dabble in. Absolutely.
Weather, advanced weather, aerobatics, and those are like separate one-off 1 hour long videos apart from the main private pilot course.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get access to all of it for that monthly fee. It's pretty cool. And as an instructor, I just realized, since we're talking about Sporties, because I've been teaching my son how to fly, who just soloed on his 16th birthday,
awesome.
by the way.
That's so cool.
Actually, we were going to put a little snippet of a video in there, maybe on the next show.
Yeah.
As an instructor, if you go in now, Colin, you go into your Sporties account and you enter your CFI certificate number, you get, because they're trying to get you to push it to your students, you get private, instrument, and commercial for free.
Oh, awesome. Okay, sweet.
Oh,
that's
cool.
great to know.
Yeah, I just realized this.
That's
myself.
really neat. Yeah.
All right. So you found your flight school that's willing to deal with you. Basically, you used one of our little tactics we teach in the course of going to your mom and pop flight school, I always call them.
Yeah.
And convincing them into, at least temporarily, turning their facility into an accelerated program.
Yeah.
And you said 3 weeks. So you got your private in 3 weeks?
Well,
I had about 10 or 15 hours, and then the rest of it, I soloed, I think, 10 days before my private, and then I got everything else done in about 10 days. So from solo to all the 10 hours of solo time you need all happened about 10 days before my check ride for private. So it was, and mind you, we're in the middle of winter in Pittsburgh. So it was I remember, I'm like, I have to hit these cross country hours. I flew in a circle for 3 hours. After I'd flown long enough to log it as cross country, because the ceilings were fairly low that day and it was crappy weather. So I flew in a circle for 3 hours just to hit minimums for my private.
Yeah, I've heard of this before. But this happens.
So a lot of the viewers are probably wondering too. So let us know the name of the school and the airport it's based out of and everything.
Yeah, so it's Pittsburgh Pilot Training, and I'll throw you guys a link and you can.
And what's the airport?
It's out of Finleyville. It's Golf 05. It's a tiny little airport. We're basically the only some of the only traffic that's coming in and out of there. It's 50 foot wide by 2,500 foot long runway. It's a really cool place to learn how to fly. And if you're familiar with the area, Allegheny, we're about 6 miles south of Allegheny Airport.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
So right outside the Class Delta there.
Yeah, right. We're in the Mode C there, and right next to the big busy Pittsburgh Bravo. So we got it's a really cool area for flight training. So we have a little bit of everything.
So you get the best of both worlds. Sorry, Sean. Yeah. If you want to, I'm going to say the same thing, probably. Right. About the tower. Is that what you're going to say?
No. Well, we can get into that. Go ahead with that. Yeah, go ahead.
So you got the uncontrolled field for landing practice and stuff, and then you could just fly over in 5 minutes to Allegheny if you need tower.
Oh yeah, it's like you take off and you're in the Delta right there. It's great. It's fantastic. And then Pitts, Bravo's right there. And when you're doing instrument, we're shooting approaches. We've got so many approaches all within a little 10-mile circle. It's fantastic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I just realized Mike said, you started all this in the spring, but somebody could be watching this 2 years from now or listening to it 2 years from now. It is now the fall. It's mid-October, and you started this in the spring. So you went from pretty much 0 hours all the way through CFI. How many months?
Right around 6 months.
6 months.
Wow.
Okay. I'm not sure if we actually explicitly said that. All right. 6 months. That's phenomenal. All right. So the private, we target accelerated timeline on a private is 21 days. Which is 3 weeks. Is that about where you were at there?
It was probably a little slower than that. But I also, I flew like a tiny bit in March, but right around there, from the time I like sold my business and was out of that was April 1st, and I took my private check ride like April 20 something. So
Nice.
pretty much right around there, timeline wise.
Okay.
Probably not quite 21 days, but right around there.
Give us an
Okay.
idea how the school's structured. How many instructors and airplanes and that?
So when I started, we had 2 instructors and 2 planes. We just got a 4th plane that should be here at the end of the month, and there's 4 instructors.
And you being one of the 4.
I'm one of the 4, and we're flying. But we're pretty much flying from 7 to like 9 p.m. every day, 7 days a week. All 3 planes running right now.
Nice.
So it's
That's
we
busy.
fly a lot. Yeah, it is. We've been very blessed. We have a lot of great students, and it's been a great place to learn at. But it's been I don't know, that flipping that switch and going to the right seat and just instructing is. I knew I would enjoy it, but like I'm happier than a tornado in a trailer park. Like this is a great gig. Like I'm loving it.
Yep. Yeah, you get to make your own schedule and stuff for the most part. And are you a private contractor there or an actual employee?
Yeah, just a 1099. So just a private
Which
contractor.
that's typical for flight instructors. It's
Yeah,
just-
that's how I did it. Yeah.
it's the way basically all flight. It also removes a layer of liability from the flight school owner, as well.
That way, if there's an accident, they can go, Colin, who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think we had him in here as a contractor. He doesn't work for me. I don't know the guy. So you rolled right in. So this private's going along here, and the flight school. You said they may have dabbled in this before, but so were they? After they're seeing how you're doing here, were they more than willing to go along with you for the instrument?
Oh, they were. Yeah, they were
twisting?
awesome with the instrument. They were amazing with the instrument, and it was like a funny story. That was kind of during that whole process where my house was on the market. I'm trying to move. We didn't even have a double I like as an instructor until it was like one of our instructors. She passed her double I like 3 days after I got my private. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do now.
Right. I remember that. And I remember, I think I even said something to you on the call, Colin, that be careful. She's not going to have, she's going to be figuring this out as much as you are, it being a brand new double I instructor,
Yeah.
So,
and thankfully I don't know what, she just waited. Like, I mean, she had, I think probably about 1,000 hours of dual given at that point. So she just waited a long time.
Oh, well, that's a pretty significant amount. You probably would have figured it out pretty quick.
Yeah. So, there wasn't, I was worried about the same thing, but it was great. And I flew with her a ton and yeah, it all worked out. It all worked out fine on that end.
So break down your entire journey and let us know how many instructors did you have, and did you stay with the same 2?
Yeah.
Or
So Jordan, the guy who owns the school, he's an awesome guy. And right after I got my private, he's kind of a second career guy too. He bought a flight school, and flight school was pretty new when I got there. I think it had only been around for maybe a year. And then he took a job with Piedmont. So he's flying with Piedmont right now. So he's kind of in and out. And then I flew with him, and then there were 2 other instructors there as well.
Gotcha.
And then I flew with both of them during instrument for the bulk of my instrument. And then when Jordan would come back, we'd just kind of check in and see how things were going. And then we just probably like last month brought in 1 more instructor. And then Jordan's kind of phased out of instructing, and he'll just fly when he's back in town from just sitting on reserve, doing nothing for 3 days at a time.
Well, that's cool. Yeah.
Did just to break down, we were talking about the school and where it's at, instructors. Did they do anything after they, you got through this private, your training instrument, and they see that this is working, this is good? Did the school really start like leaning into this thing a little bit and trying to help you out? Like start when you're halfway through your instrument, start talking to you about commercial and
so we did a handful of things along that. Like I had all my instructors early on. They're like, you're going to be teaching this. It seems like a long way off, but they're like, you're going to be teaching this in no time. So they started just giving me a lot of food for thought and like teachable moments of like, here's how I would teach this. And so that got implemented
very good
pretty early on, like just kind of showing me the ropes of the instructing side of it. But a lot more when commercial popped around. My original plan was actually to take my commercial from the right seat and try to take my CFI check ride like a week later or 2 weeks later, and just scheduling didn't work out. So I think I had probably 80 hours in the right seat during my commercial just training. So
Wow.
I transitioned to the right seat pretty early because I knew I was going to wind up there. And
Yeah.
Very good.
so we did stuff like that. Like they started doing just a lot of small, thoughtful things to try to prep and make the
Right.
CFI journey. And I would just, I'd backseat for flights. I'd sit in on ground, watch people teach it, just try to
Gotcha.
pick up
Love
as
it.
much as I could along the way.
I
I
got
see.
a kind of question I bet most people will be interested in. So, what's circulating all over the internet now is this DPE shortage. It's like the biggest deal, right? It doesn't matter where you are in America. It seems like there's just not enough DPEs. We did that very great interview. We got a ton of views with Jamal from. He was at the time of the interview. He had blown through his training, and then he was just waiting for weeks for a check ride.
Yep.
How did that affect you, and what does this school do to compensate for that problem?
So we have one DPE that usually is at our place. He gives us about 3-4 dates a month, and we'll do a couple check rides each of those days.
And
so
he just comes down. He plans
He just
on
comes
coming for
down.
that
Yeah, he
day.
comes down. He travels in. He lives pretty close by, and I mean, he's you hear all those horror stories about DPEs. I really actually enjoyed working with him. He's a really good guy, and you could tell he's one of those folks that just loves doing it because he would always like share these teachable moments with me, and I actually got a lot out of those check rides. And then he doesn't do CFI initials, and no one does, and it's impossible to find him. But we did have a guy. I actually went up to Ohio to take it, but I scheduled that the day I passed my instrument rating. And the first date, and I think that was in June, and the first date he had was in October, like that last week in October.
So you were on top of it, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing too is it was nice that I had a school that was willing to like, yeah, you're gonna make it. They weren't waiting until I was flying perfectly to standards, everything before they're like, okay, let's book your check ride now. My check ride was booked, and they're like, all right, it's your job to make sure you don't screw this up.
Yeah, I've noticed back, Mike and I, when we came up through it, this was never an issue, but this is common practice now. Yeah, you got to book that check ride way before you ever think about being ready for it.
And I'm just super thankful that, one of the instructors took his CFI with the same guy. He's like, hey, he's so booked up now. He's like, get in the schedule and then check it every single day because the earlier date might pop up. Earlier date never popped up, but I still checked it every day. And it ended up being pretty good pacing wise. I got pretty sick for like 10 days in the middle of it. I ended up taking like 3 weeks of vacation over the course of the 6 months just to hang out with the kids and family. And so I could have gone faster, but I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to. And we all got to the same place within a couple of weeks of faster.
What, so back to the timeline. I just want to assure this up here. So the private, it was 3 weeks to a month. You got your private.
Yep.
How long you figure it took to get your instrument?
Instrument was 6 weeks, I believe. I think 6 weeks on instrument. 6 weeks on instrument.
What about the commercial?
Commercial was about a month. Yeah, commercial was about a month. But I ended up getting super sick right before my check ride and had to push it to about a month and a half, I think. Yeah, I pushed about 2 or 3 weeks down the road just because I was so sick.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I had a month between commercial and CFI, just because that's the earliest CFI date I could get.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. This is more of a Colin, if you had to do it all over again kind of question. You could think about it
very
like
good,
that.
yeah.
But besides just that overwhelming big circle picture question, was there any difficulties, any trip ups you ran across? Like, was the FBO always willing to schedule all this stuff the way you wanted it? Examiner issues, that was Mike just asked that was on there. But basically, just any difficulties you had with the whole thing. I mean, that's a good one. What was the overall difficulty level of all this, and what were the problems, the roadblocks to keep somebody from doing this?
I think, the biggest roadblock's always money, right? So
sure.
I kind of, I was fortunate enough to eliminate that one by selling the business and being able to do this full time. So money and time, those first 2 roadblocks, I got knocked off pretty quick. But from there, I really did. Like, I've got 2 little kids at home. My oldest is 3. My youngest is 1.5 years. and I got a wife, and I always, jokingly said I got to add a lot more zeros to the cost of flight training if I get divorced. So it's like balancing the at-home life with the new schedule and the constant changing of it, and that was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be, just because it's like kind of adjusting to a new routine. And then, like flight schedules are, especially when you're training, it's a disaster. Like you never know when a plane's going to go down for maintenance, when the weather's going to come in. And when you have those deadlines and those check ride books, I mean, I remember, I think I flew 30 hours the week before my instrument check ride just to get everything in, because we were just had 2 bad weeks of weather in a row and I was a little behind. And so just the unexpectedness of it all and not knowing how that was going to affect family life at home, I think was the biggest challenge. Thankfully, my wife's a saint. And like, if my kids weren't sick all the time, it would have been much easier. And if I was a single man, I think we could have flown through this thing. But that was the most unexpected challenge. I didn't realize how much it was going to affect my family. Because, I didn't hate my old job or anything, but I wasn't necessarily the most pleasant person when I'd come home from work. And now I'm like doing something I love. And I'm like, well, the stress at home is just going to go away, right? No problem. Not the case, right? Not the case. A little wishful thinking there.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, are you ready, Colin? Are you ready for the big question? Are you ready to put the cheese on the cracker and tell us?
Let's do it.
Tell us the numbers, man. I know you're a numbers. You've kept track of every penny since you started, right?
Yeah,
you're a financial
it should be pretty darn close. I might have missed like one thing, but yeah, like
so
total.
Do you want to say the big number first, or you want to say each number, or for each rating, or what do you?
I think it's getting built up too much now.
Yeah, we'll just blurt it out and go from there.
Yeah, all right, sounds good.
Like total everything, and that's like headsets, training courses, like every penny I could think of. It's about $51,609.33 is what it came out.
Wow! So that's all the PPE fees, training
that's
materials.
all. Yeah, that's all the check rides, my like Bose headset, like everything's in there.
Yeah, so that's a low number, considering most people probably leave out the numbers of the Bose headset, and what they spend on sporties and whatever. So that's all in. That's pretty good.
Really good. That's really good. That's like a number. When I was training people 25 years ago, that we would hear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. That's great. Well, are you willing? Because, there's a lot of people that are going to watch this video like, wow, this sounds like a great deal. Now, not everybody can get to Pittsburgh and all that. I understand. But are you accepting new students? Can people contact you, or how's that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I'll shoot you guys kind of like the website that has all like the contact info, and just mention you saw me on here. And we're getting a new plane, so we should have some more slots open up too. But we do have people who are still doing kind of like my style program, and it wasn't me first. There's other people who did it like me before.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd love to have you come out to Finleyville. It's pretty cool. It's like a little slice of peace amongst all the chaos. It's a pretty cool little field.
Yeah, well, we'll put it in the show description, show notes down there. People can find it, the link below. Real quick though, just so somebody sitting at home trying to figure this out, just since we got another minute here, so do you have the breakdown for each certificate and rating, just so somebody at home could bounce off? Private, he only spent.
Oh 10... yeah, I do. I'm gonna cheat on my little Excel sheet here. So it looks like. I think private was about $9,100. Looks like instrument was just shy of 15.
Really?
Instrument was just shy of 15. And it looks like commercial, and I mean, so like I think I only flew maybe 6 hours in prep for my CFI check ride. Because the weather was terrible and planes were down. It just like, I was like terrified going into my CFI check ride, but it worked out.
Yeah.
So that looks like about 25 for all that.
Gotcha.
I did get 50 hours in a sim, which saved me a good chunk of money too.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot.
What kind of sim do they have there?
It was I went to a neighboring airport. They got an AATD over there.
Oh, cool. What kind of airplanes were you training in? And
we're in, Warriors, Archers, all the Piper stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, pretty much that the whole time, between a Warrior and an Archer.
Man, gotcha. That is great. Awesome.
Yeah, I would say my 2 cents on it, right? So whenever I was a financial advisor, people would always come to me with these things they wanted to do. They'd always ask me, is this a good decision? I was like, well, listen, as your financial advisor, this is probably the worst decision you could ever make. But as your friend, you should probably go buy that boat because I would love to spend time with you on it, right? So there's that, right? So if I look at the decision I made to make this jump into this new career, financially, it was a terrible choice.
Right.
But on that other side, right, it was the best thing I've ever done. And if you're on the fence about it, just jump in, right? The worst case scenario is you try to do something you love and you've got to figure out something.
Yes. Yes.
It's easy for me to sit here and say now, but it's a pretty stressful jump going through, and it's not easy to flip the switch. And when you've got a wife and kids and you got a mortgage you got to pay and all those other things, like there's a lot of weight behind that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was the right time for me to do it. But if I would have waited much longer, there's a pretty good chance it wasn't going to happen.
Well,
Really.
Colin, you got to remind yourself in 5 years, you're going to look back and wonder why you didn't do it all.
Oh, absolutely.
Quicker.
Absolutely.
Why didn't you do this earlier? Yeah.
Yeah. 5 years ago. Yeah.
And it's more of a short-term terrible financial decision, short-term gain,
Sure.
long-term sacrifice. I'm very optimistic about the outlook from here on out. But I did leave a very stable, solid thing behind, and I didn't regret it for 1 second.
Right.
I love it. Love hearing that, man. I love hearing that. Well, you're going to stay in our coaching, and we're going to help you through your CFI and help you kind of network and get a job. And what we're seeing a lot in the coaching is the other students are trying to network with each other, and they're talking about job opportunities and all that stuff. So we look forward to helping you there. It sounds like you had all the components, man. You stumbled onto a great school. You got a great family. I have to say, it looks like above your head, you got a really good dog there too. He was
I guess he did sneak in here at one point. He's a pretty good dude. He just hangs out. And he's basically a cat. He hates people, but he'll tolerate us enough to get fed, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. Awesome.
All right.
Well,
Colin, congratulations on your newly minted CFI certificate.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for all the help.
Cool.
Thanks for all the help along the way too. I really, you guys were a great sounding board early on and still are, and I've enjoyed all those coaching calls and all those conversations. They've
awesome,
helped tremendously through the whole process.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, I said the other day on the coaching call, I mean, you are the poster child of why we're doing all this, and hearing your story and how, maybe or maybe not, Mike and I had direct influence in you changing your life. But the fact is, your life has been changed, and you are on your way to be a professional pilot, man. And so cool. And you did it in less time than most people get their private.
Yeah, it was. I came home from my first day instructing. I looked at my wife and I said, "This is the best job I've ever had," and everybody tells me this is the worst job you could ever have in aviation. So we're gonna be okay.
Yeah. You were having a blast doing the worst job.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man. I love it. Man, what a success. We love hearing this. We've got another guy in the coaching. Rotor wing guy that did his fixed wing transition that started about the same time you do. And, he's already got an interview at a major operator this week. I can't wait to document more of what you're doing. Probably have you on here in a few months. Maybe you could talk about how your CFI journey is going and instructing. And then, hopefully we follow you all the way through until you get into that jet.
Yeah, I would love to. And if anybody's sitting there on the fence, just do it. Life's short. Chase your dreams and do what you love. You'll never regret it a day in your life.
Awesome. Love it.
It's good stuff.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you for joining us on the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast. If you have a question for us you'd like us to answer on the show, you can email us at podcast@propilotplaybook.com. And other than that, what else? Oh, yeah, hit that like button, subscribe, all that. And
you can check out our app in the App Store.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, guys.